rumour that Remco Evenepoel, world champion, winner of the Vuelta, he's had a good couple of months. Velo News reported that Lefebvre said, Lefebvre being the boss of Quickstep, that Brailsford texted him after the Vuelta along the lines of, congrats on winning the Vuelta, you got a great champion on your hands, Remco Evenepoel. If you ever want to sell him, let me know. Whether you're just starting out on your cycling journey or are looking for those final tune-ups ahead of a big event or race, Zwift is the online cycling platform that makes things fun. There are 9 different worlds, thousands of kilometers of virtual road, including replicas of real-world climbs like Alpe du Zwift. There's workouts, training plans, events and races for every level of rider. The massive community means you're never alone. So if you want to find out more about Zwift or indeed to start your free 7-day trial, head to Zwift.com down below. This started the rumour mill. And what I don't get is, I understand, listen, INEOS being interested in Remco, who wouldn't be? It makes sense. What I don't get is here, the rumours seem to be that the interest was mutual. I never saw any evidence that Remco was interested or Quickstep were interested in selling him, but yet that was sort of what the news cycle was saying.
Yeah, to that point, there was no real news from Remco Evenepoel being intrigued by that INEOS interest at all so far. We know that we've spoken about Remco potentially fitting in a team like INEOS, but nothing based on factual information that Remco Evenepoel was like, oh, I would like to join INEOS. Like, he hasn't said that yet. And to be honest, Lefebvre also, his responses were very similar as well, but I throw it back to you before we actually read the responses that Lefebvre gave over the last couple of days. What did you think about the initial article? Like, did you think, okay, this is just not happening?
My initial thought was that Lefebvre was trying to, someone's leaked it, and I doubt it's INEOS. And to me, it looks like Lefebvre kind of flexing, and it's a bit humiliating for INEOS because it's essentially INEOS saying, please, we want to win now. Like, it makes sense to me that behind the scenes, Ratcliffe hasn't won the Tour for 3 years and they want to win the Tour, and Remco's pretty good, but it looks a bit like, a lack of faith in the guys they've just signed or the current GC contenders, and it looks a bit desperate. But that being said, we haven't seen the text either. It could have just been tongue-in-cheek. I don't think so, though. Like, no, it's a weird joke to make. Like, it's not really a joke. Like, if you want to sell him, let me know. Like, haha. It's not really a joke. It's kind of serious point. So, I don't know. I just thought it was Lefebvre making INEOS kind of look bad. And it did, because the next day he went on radio or on some Flemish radio, and he said, it's not happening, 0.0% chance. Patrick Evenepoel and Remco called me saying no chance. They were shocked. And he said it'll cost $100 million, or euros, sorry, for INEOS to buy Evenepoel. So that was that, Benji. And then they put up an Instagram of them at dinner. So
there's also an aspect to it where Lefebvre said, he was like, I don't know where I saw the article, but he was going in depth about this entire thing and started mentioning that his response to the message that Brailsford had sent him was not to the likes of like, oh yeah, you can have Remco. Obviously that was not the response. The response was more like, if I retire, INEOS Group can buy up the entire team. Because he's mentioned that a few times over the years that he doesn't know what will happen to the Quickstep team as he retires, what the plans are afterwards, and that's the stuff he said there. What, sorry?
I'll Bacala, the billionaire will put me in. Patrick 2.0.
Okay, deal. What will happen to the podcast
pack. Then? What's a pack of kangaroos called?
I don't know.
There must be a specific term for it. Change all the branding, have to change all the cars. And they won't be using BMWs from Luxembourg. They'll be based in Andorra, and they'll be using Holden Commodores as the team cars. Anyway, sorry, go on, Benji.
Yeah, basically that was like the input that Lefebvre gave to Brailsford as well. But all in all, like, when we see this happening, there's an entire storm of stuff happening throughout the days, because we had that message initially, people on social media jumping on that message, thinking, okay, there's something in this. And there's also the aspect, we were talking about it, like the evening itself of the initial message being reported, like how much would it cost? Lefebvre says 100 million. I had it more pinpointed at 30 to 50 million the first time I thought about it, because how does one come up with the idea of how much it would cost to buy a Remco Evenepoel out of a contract? Well, you got to keep in mind, Quickstep has sponsors. They've got Quickstep, they've got Soudal, they've got loads of other smaller sponsors as well involved, that quite a few of them signed up based on the fact that Remco Evenepoel is in the team. Like, I'm pretty sure that the Soudal put more money on the table because Evenepoel is in that team. And that goes for other sponsors as well. And I think Lefebvre also mentioned that, let's say that the Remco Evenepoel leaves the team, a part of his 100 million calculation was based on the fact that some of these sponsors would require damages being paid out to them, because Remco Evenepoel is part of the deal in that sponsorship agreement. So how did I come up with the 30-50 guesstimate that I went into that evening? Well, I was thinking sponsorships need to be somewhat paid, in the sense that, let's say that Quickstep and Soudal reduce their sponsorships if Remco goes. For the length of the contract of Evenepoel of 4 years, I think 2026, that's 4 years of roughly 5 to 7.5 million, plus an extra bit to actually buy Remco out of the team, and his future performances being valued at future investments as well. Like, all that combined, that's a lot of money. And you think that's too much because we're talking about big football transfers being 100 million and so forth. Would it be crazy to just have like a transfer buyout in cycling of like 30 to 50 million?
No, it wouldn't be, because, like, what would be the point of building up Remco, going through the crash? He wins the Vuelta. He wins the World Championships. He's not even done a race in the Rainbow Bands yet. Belgian, on a Belgian team, to then sell him. What would be the whole... At that point, you'd think, what's the point in Quickstep existing? Like, this is the reason you exist, is for a rider like this, of this level, Belgian, to see where he can go and break the Tour de France drought, and to sell him before you've even done a tour with him. It's just wouldn't make sense. And even, as you said, financially, like the whole team, the sponsor contracts hinge on him. That does mean, though, they had to have a meeting, and I think Patrick Evenepoel's the agent of Remco, so I don't think Remco... I'm not sure his contract has been the highest level relative to his value. You can't have Lefebvre saying he's worth 100 million to the team and Remco's earning $1 million a year, 1.5 a year, which I reckon is the region pre-Vuelta. If he's worth 100 million, well, you got to pay him at least 4 a year. Probably he's worth 5 to 6 a year. If Pog's on 6, Remco should be on 6 sort of region as well, given the value to sponsors. Maybe he won't probably get paid that amount. He hasn't won the Tour twice, but like he should be paid a lot of money. So I presume they're doing a renegotiation. And that was what the dinner was, reaffirming their commitment to each other. And probably, well, I mean, he's signed through like 2026, so I'd be surprised if they do an extension. But Ayuso extended too. I mean, UAE extend their guys and seem to keep them happy too. So anyway, what do you think though, Benji? Like, who comes out? I think Quickstep come out neutral in this. It doesn't matter. Like, Remco's going to get probably his salary upped. He's not leaving. INEOS, on the other hand, like, do you believe INEOS? This is the one thing we haven't. Do you believe INEOS were genuinely interested? Like, if Lefebvre said, let's talk, they would go all in.
All in would be big, I think, but I think there's certainly some interest from INEOS' side to get a new top spot in their team. I heard some rumors recently that Rodriguez has signed for Movistar in 2024. There's no confirmation of that yet, but if that's true, they're losing riders left and right that could potentially be their big guns in the future. And I think they quite certainly are looking for that new star in their team, because they don't have a certainty when it comes to Bernal. And yeah, I think INEOS come out of this a bit looking slightly desperate in that sense. I think when it comes to Quickstep and Soudal, they'll be happy with their sponsor name being in all over the news. And I think Lefevre is even pretty happy with how this turns out. He gets to flex about Remco Evenepoel being intrigued by other teams. On the other end, it could also have an influence on Remco Evenepoel's personal feelings. Let's say that in the media, Lefevre starts talking about the amount of money that Remco is worth. Like you mentioned earlier, like Remco could think, okay, well, how about my money? Like you mentioned, like that stuff could also be a consequence of that. But I do think, like, if we outside of the situation here, look at which team would Remco Evenepoel in 2023 be getting the best results at? And I'd say INEOS. No?
It's tough. It's tough because who would his domestiques be? Say he does Tour de France next year. What team would they put with him? He would have Thomas. Okay. His TTs, I think it's not going to get worse, I don't think. Might even get better with like big Evenepoel is like Bigham's dream, right? He could put him in some mental position and CDA of 0. So Thomas, Sivakov, Martinez, Turner, Kwiatkowski, it's a better team. It's more experienced. It's a better team. Is it that much better? Is it peak Sky level? I don't know. And I think the disappointing thing, I mean, you got Vivaika, Alaphilippe. Alaphilippe was good for a crash out of Vuelta. Cavagna, De Klerk. The disappointing thing, if I'm Remco, is I'm thinking, why the fuck did you sign Tim Merlier? I've been on a discount, and you're signing Tim Merlier instead of, I know you got Jan Hirt, but where's Wout Poels? Where's Connor Swift, who would have fit in the classic squad? I know probably INEOS, he would have gone there anyway, but that's the one question mark where I'm like, okay, Quickstep, you need to really start signing some Grand Tour domestiques.
I agree with that. I also would say that the reason I said INEOS, for example, being the better spot for next year is that I think there is a differentiation in potential goals, whether he's at Quickstep or at INEOS for me. If I look at Quickstep and I look at the Giro parkour next year, Remco Evenepoel perfectly fits that parkour and should be going to the Giro, in my personal opinion. I think a lot of people disagree and want to see him at the Tour de France. I think he should do the Giro next year. If that parkour indeed has 3 time trials, 70k ITT kilometers, that's just perfect for him. He can win that Giro based on that parkour, and he doesn't need the all-out best team at the Giro to make it happen. At the Tour de France, he would require a really strong team, and the likes of sprinters like Jacobs and Merlier, what is the plan with Quickstep and their sprinters? Alaphilippe will want some stuff as well. Like, Remco Evenepoel going to the Tour would just have an influence on so many other stakeholders within the team, riders in the team that also have goals that include the Tour de France, that I think that will be very difficult to balance for Lefevre already for the Tour de France next season. At INEOS, he'd straight up be co-leader at the Tour de France. That's how I see that, if not leader at the Tour de France. That's the simple fact. And I think that INEOS would be more leading him towards the Tour de France participation next year, while a Quickstep would lead him towards a Giro participation next year. I think that's a difference between the two teams.
Yeah, and there's still, Alaphilippe on the books, and you're right, it would all be Tour de France, that's why they'd buy him out. But it's not happening. So we'll see what the Tour de France parcours looks like, and we'll see what INEOS do, what teams they put together.